Before the international fixtures, Juventus played against Milan at home. No more team had beaten the Serie A champion more than Milan. In this match, both teams tried hard to win. They showed their well-prepared tactics to hit the weaknesses of opponents. In this tactical analysis, we will show you the tactical battle between Maurizio Sarri's team and Stefano Pioli's team. Lineups. Compared to the team that played Moscow, there were some changes in the Juventus lineup. Daniele Rugani replaced by Matthijs de Ligt. Juan Cuadrado once again played as a right back. Danilo was on the bench. Miralem Johnny's midfield partners were Blaise Matuidi and Rodrigo Bentancur. Aaron Ramsey took a rest, and Federico Bernardeschi played as an attacking midfielder. It was a 4-3-1-2 formation. Milan also played a team without wide players in a 4-3-2-1 formation. Davide Calabria was left on the bench, Andrea Conti took his position. Suso returned to the squad, and Samu Castillejo was injured. The Spaniard formed the front three with Christophe Piatek and Hakan Calhanoglu. Juventus struggled in their own half. In the first half, Juventus wished to play out from the back as usual. However, they encountered some difficulties since Milan's pressing. The problem was twofold. First, we explain the defensive setups of the away team. Milan tried to press Juventus in a 4-3-3 shape. They know the importance of the sole pivot under Sarri ball, and their press targeted Johnny Suso and Piatek, provided pressure around the ball, and Calhanoglu was usually the man to mark the Bosnian. Meanwhile, Milan midfielders also followed up to lock the midfield area. They wanted to eliminate options of Juventus players to break the press. For Juventus, their problem was lacked wide players. Their formation did not have wingers. They should open their shape, stretch the pitch and make opponents difficult to cover all options. If not, they were forced to go wide or play along, but this was not secure since they did not have a target man. In this scenario, the front three and midfielders of Milan did their job, denied Cuadrado from playing the ball out. Since Juventus players were too close to each other, a pass could possibly be intercepted. The key was the positionings of Bentancur and Bernardeschi. They all positioned themselves at the center and besides an opponent. Therefore, they were unavailable for a pass. Cuadrado had no choice, he carried the ball wide and play along, lost the possession. Another point to note was the shape of Juventus. 8 of their players were stuck in a tight area. This made them very difficult to move the ball as opponents were defending in a small area. They need the width to stretch the opponents. Despite their struggles to play out from their own half, Juventus still got their ways to enter the final third. Their switch plays were good. They could break the press from a side, usually the left, and find a teammate at the weak side. Since Milan pressed in a narrow shape, they left huge spaces at the weak side. As the below case, which de Ligt spread the ball to Cuadrado. Now, the Juventus right back provided the width on the right flank. The Colombian was totally unmarked, and he could exploit the huge space at the weak side. The weight accuracy of the pass from de Ligt allowed Cuadrado to enter the final third. When Juventus reached the final third, in most cases, Juventus switched plays from left to right, and 2 of the shooting opportunities in the first half were from this flank. Milan was a pressing team, their players often stepped out early to close off opponents. Juventus tried to turn this habit to a weakness of Milan. Juventus tried to increase the gap between the center backs. They did it by some off-the-ball movements of players. First, the ball carrier drew Milan's left back Theo Hernandez away. Meanwhile, a horizontal or diagonal run from the center to the right flank could take away the left center back, Alessio Romagnoli. Given the poor defensive awareness and protections of midfielders, the third man could run between the center backs, as Gonzalo Higuain did. On rare occasions, Milan midfielders cover those spaces. Milan lacked midfield protections. The defensive awareness of Milan midfielders was a concern. They seemed uninterested to track runs or cover spaces left after their teammates pressed. This weakness of exposed given the third man runs of Juventus. In this case, Lucas Paqueta should have tracked Alex Sandro's run. However, he just let his international teammate ran behind him. Cristiano Ronaldo released a Brazilian to hit space behind Conti. Romagnoli read the danger and cleared it. Since Milan had this problem, they were weak to prevent Juventus from penetrating between the lines. On several occasions, Bernardeschi was the free player to make runs behind. Offensive transitions of Milan. A possible explanation of Milan's defense setup could be their offensive transitions. The Milan front three were staying high and left huge space for the midfielders to cover, since this produced more threat in their counter-attacks. Some Juventus players, including Matuidi and Cuadrado, liked carrying the ball forward. If Milan intercepted the ball from these players, they created a good moment to counter. In this case, Paqueta won the ball from Matuidi, and the Milan front three already positioned behind Johnny. They were ready to sprint forward and hit Juventus with a fast break. Paqueta passed well and picked Piatek, and it was a 3-against-3. The Polish striker's shot was parried away by Wojciech Szczęsny. This type of attacks showed Milan's determination to get forward in offensive transitions. They utilized their chances to hit Juventus as quick as possible. Milan had 2 sets of build-up plays. Apart from their offensive transitions, Milan also tried to build out from the back. They responded well to the press of Juventus. When pressing high, Juventus stuck to their original shape, 4-3-1-2. Except for the defenders, their players could all take part in the high press. The main idea was to protect the central areas, then closed off opponents when the ball was moved to wide. However, they had their constraints. Ronaldo and Higuain were 34 and 31 already. They could not commit an intensive high press. Therefore, Milan could escape from the press with 2 different types of build-up plays. The first was demonstrated below. It was a 4-3-3 shape, with Ismail Bennacer dropped to the center. In contrast to Juventus's shape, their full-backs stayed wide to provide themselves as solutions. In most cases, Ronaldo and Higuain positioned themselves between the center-backs and midfielders. They seldom put pressure on the ball. Bernardeschi should mark Bennacer. Therefore, the full-backs were free. It required a long distance from the Juventus midfielders to close off the full-backs. Also, they created an overload, 2v1 on this situation. Since Cuadrado did not step up to mark Raid Krunic, Bentancur was confused who to mark. Hernandez took advantage from the confusion of Bentancur. The Uruguayan moved backwards to block the passing lane towards Krunic. This gave the Spanish left back room to carry the ball forward. The overload could occur in other parts of the pitch. The below example explained. This time, Juventus commit more players in their high press, just without the defenders. They also remained compact horizontally and vertically to block the center. Everything seemed fine. However, this time Krunic dropped beside of Bennacer to create an overload on Bernardeschi and Bentancur. Since the Algerian pinned Bernardeschi, Krunic became the free player. This again forced the Uruguayan to choose between Milan left back and left midfielder. The ball was easily played out from the back. When Bentancur decided to close off Hernandez, Higuain was slow to block Krunic, and the Bosnian could receive the ball without pressure from the left back. The press was broken by the passes and positionings of Milan players. Despite the overloading of Milan players, the failure of Juventus' high press could also be attributed to the ineffective press from the strikers. They were not quick and energetic enough to close off opponents or to press and win the ball back. They gave Milan too many rooms to play with. What happened in the second half? In this part of the analysis, we focus on the changes Juventus made after the break. Pioli also adjusted his team, which he instructed Suso to stay at a wider position on the right flank. Given the compact shape of Juventus, Pioli would like the Spanish winger to enjoy some spaces and play diagonal passes for the front players. In contrast, Sarri's changes made a bigger impact. He released his attacking midfielder. The player of this position no longer had to stay deeper in the build-up. Instead, he exploited the spaces between lines and connecting plays. This was shown effective in the below example, which Bernardeschi made himself available between lines. Again, the coverage of Milan midfielders was not enough to protect the central areas. This gave the Italian spaces to receive the ball once Bentancur brought away Bennacer. Then, the former Fiorentina man could turn, and this resulted in a shooting chance of Juventus. Douglas Costa came on for Bernardeschi, and he did the same. When we considered the elements included in this analysis, this explained how Paulo Dybala scored the winning goal. It was not a coincidence, but a moment of talent from the Argentine, and the weakness of Milan defense occurred. In this scene, Bentancur passed the ball to Costa. Once again, it was poor marking and weak protection of spaces by Milan midfielders. Paqueta did not mark Costa tightly, while Bennacer totally forgot Dybala was behind him. Maybe the Algerian expected Romagnoli would step up and take care of Dybala. This did happen. Romagnoli tried to press him, but it was too late. The Argentine made good use of the space between Hernandez and Romagnoli and scored with his right foot. Conclusion. To sum up, it was still yet to be the best from Juventus. It looked they still need time to adapt the system under Sarri. Their control of shape, the build-up plays or positionings of players, still had rooms for improvement. However, they were better in the final third than Milan. Surprisingly, Milan somehow managed to fight until the end, despite the result was realistic. They tried to play out from the back and managed to break the press on several occasions. Despite the presence of SZCZ, they still to enhance their quality in the attacking third, and we believe Pioli still got time to improve his team.